like to thank you all for coming today. While Veterans Day is primarily a tribute to America's living veterans, should be observed more as a celebration than a somber remembrance. The signing of the World War I armistice in 1918 took place in a railway coach near the battle zone in France. At 11 a.m., the bugles sounded ceasefiring and the hostilities ended, making a most significant moment in world history. I would like to take a moment of silence for those who gave their lives for their country. If you wish to participate in the following prayer, please bow your heads. Lord, keep our troops forever in your care. Give them a victory over the enemy. Grant them a safe and swift return, and bless those who mourn the loss. Amen. When Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner a little more than 200 years ago, he called America the land of the free and the home of the brave. Those words are as true today as they were back then. Throughout this nation's history, American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, Coast Guardsmen have bravely answered the call to defend our freedom, to aid our friends and allies, and to turn back aggressors. We can never fully repay our debt of gratitude to the more than 650,000 American service members who have died in battle, or the 1.4 million who were wounded. We can, however, recognize and thank the 25 million veterans still living today. These words are inscribed on the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. Our nation honors her sons and daughters who answered the call to defend a country they never knew and a people they also never met. Those words equally apply to our World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and Gulf War veterans as well. They apply to today's active duty service members, tomorrow's veterans, who are helping to maintain peace throughout the world. Today, it is our privilege to say thank you to all America's veterans, to let them know that we appreciate them for their service and honor them for their sacrifices. The price of freedom is high. We cannot afford to forget those willing to pay for it. Today, we celebrate America's veterans for keeping this nation the land of the free and the home of the brave. I would like to introduce District Director of Veteran Services of Acton and Boxborough, James McCrae.
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'd like to read a proclamation, a congressional proclamation from Member of Congress, Congresswoman Lori Trahan, in recognition of Veterans Day 2021, given in honor of the courage, sacrifice, and dedication of all veterans of the United States Armed Forces. Whereas the town of Acton has great admiration and the utmost gratitude for the men and women who selflessly served their nation in a time of peril, and on Veterans Day honors the sacrifices and contributions of the veterans from Acton and have made our nation, and this year we mark the 30th anniversary of the end of the 1991 Persian Gulf War and the end of the war in Afghanistan, our longest war in American history. And whereas we come together as a community, a commonwealth, and a nation to celebrate Veterans Day on November 11th in honor of the signing of the armistice at Compiègne, France in 1918 that ended the fight on land, sea, and air on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, signaling the end of the World War I, known as Armistice Day. And whereas in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower issued the first Veterans Day proclamation and changed the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day in recognition of all veterans, calling on all Americans to observe Veterans Day in tribute of those who have thus added strength to the nation and renewed dedication to their work, building peace with honor among all nations. And whereas our veterans continue to be an inspiration to each other, to each of us through their courage and continued service, and the greatest acknowledgement of our freedoms is to come together as a nation to commemorate their service and the service of veterans who are no longer with us. And whereas on Veterans Day, we recommit ourselves to the principles of freedom and democracy and solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought valiantly and served selflessly to defend the freedoms that we as Americans hold so dear. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the town of Acton is acknowledged for its long-standing commitment to honoring all veterans and its dedication to ensuring their service and sacrifices are never forgotten. Therefore, I do by here call on all Americans to observe Thursday, November 11th, 2021, as Veterans Day, and ask that this day be observed with appropriate ceremonies in honor of those who serve to defend the freedoms that we as Americans hold so dear. Given this 11th day of November in the year 2021, and the 245th year of the independence of the United States, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the seal of Congress of the United States, Lori Trahan, Member of Congress. And with that, I'd like to welcome you all to today's ceremony. And thank you to all the residents here in attendance, veterans especially. I would like to thank the select board members here with us, David Martin, Fran Arsenault, and Jim Snyder-Grant, as well as our town manager, John Mangiarotti, and State Representative Tammy Gouveia. Thank you. I'm honored to be speaking with you on such an important occasion. We're here today to honor the service members and to remember the sacrifices they have made, as well as the courage it sometimes takes to serve our country. Philosopher and Revolutionary War supporter Thomas Paine once said, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must undergo the fatigue of supporting it." Many of you here today have borne that burden and experienced the fatigue of waging war in order to bring about peace. To you, I say thank you. This holiday serves as a reminder that it is ultimately the veterans that have given us our freedom and security by taking on such burdens. I served in the Army Corps of Engineers for 5 years and completed 2 tours in Iraq. And in the last 10 years, I've had the honor of assisting many veterans in Acton and Boxborough who served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and other conflicts. I've also assisted many peacetime veterans. Over the years, when meeting residents for the first time, I always managed to slip in the question, "Are you a veteran?" Unfortunately, oftentimes that question is answered with, "No, I'm not a veteran. I mean, I served in the military for X amount of years, but I never fought in a war." My response is always something similar to the following. You are a veteran. You served in support of your country for X amount of years, and I thank you for that. You signed your name on the dotted line. You didn't know what those years were going to hold for you. Having said that, while not all veterans see war, all who served in the military have played an integral part in our military's framework. We honor veterans from every era, rank, and branch of service. Whether it be active duty, National Guard, or Reserve, we honor equally anyone who takes that leap to put on that uniform. Veteran is a title that very few hold. We have to appreciate that. And that's exactly why we're gathered here today. And with that thought in mind, I would like to end with a short quote from President John F. Kennedy. A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors, the men it remembers. Thank you.
Thank you, James. We will now have the ladies from the Acton Minutemen place the wreath and the flowers at the Veterans Monument.
Rest. Violence. Shoulder. Violence.
The Minutemen will now fire 3 volleys.
Shoulder. Violence. Hey, ready. Present. Fire. Priming. Load. Shoulder. Violence. Hey, ready. Present. Fire. Priming. Load. Shoulder your violence. Hey, ready. Present. Fire. Shoulder your violence. Small sign. Right about. Hey. Rest your violence. Order your violence.
Now Tammy Govea would like to come up and speak, State Representative.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to say a few words, and I just want to thank you, Jim, again for your service to our country and your continued service in supporting veterans in our community. It means so much to all who have served, and I know it means so much to their families as well as all of the residents here in our community, so thank you for that. I'm State Representative Tammy Govea, and I just wanted to say a few words of gratitude for all of you who are here in support of our veterans today and in celebrating all of the sacrifices that they and their families have made to secure our freedoms and our liberty here, going back in time. It's great to have the connection with our history as the town of Acton and coming back to present day. Our military members are among the most fittest physically and medically and mentally in our society. And the contributions they make both abroad and here at home are immeasurable. There's so much more that we can be doing, and this is something that I think about all the time as a military family and as a state representative. How can we support our military families? I go over to Hanscom and I see some of the needs that exist over there. Sometimes our military members, our families are still facing food insecurity. So finding ways to support our veterans is critically important to make sure that they're able to take care of their families. We know that there's such diversity in the service members who have been, are part of our community going back, almost 100 years and more recently. And so we know within that diversity, the needs are very different because the kinds of conflicts that our service members have faced are very diverse. So making sure that we are supporting and investing in programs that meet the mental health, healthcare, housing, and food needs of all of our veterans is critically important. So I invite you to join us at the legislature to support these kinds of investments as we're standing here to celebrate and express our gratitude for all the sacrifices that are made on our behalf. I thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, State Representative Tammy Govea. Now we have Select Board Member David Martin to speak.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here this morning. I've always been in awe of those who serve to defend our democracy. Putting their life on the line is the ultimate display of courage, not to mention other sacrifices, such as spending long periods away from family and friends. Acton has a long history of people literally putting themselves on the front lines. In the Revolutionary War battle at Concord's Old North Bridge, Isaac Davis's company was the first to advance. One of the reasons for this is that Isaac Davis had seen to it that the members of his company were outfitted with a French technology. They all had bayonets mounted to the end of their long guns, allowing to defend themselves between firing rounds. In the Civil War, the Davis Guards, the name of the Acton Company in the 6th Massachusetts Infantry, was in the first skirmish in Baltimore after the war started. Residents of Acton signed up for the terrible but vital World Wars. The newly created Acton Beacon newspaper covered the involvement of Acton soldiers in World War II, including those that made the ultimate sacrifice. We honor the Acton veterans today that were involved in Korea, Vietnam, Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. We admire the members of our military who continue to be deployed across the United States and around the world to defend our democratic values. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And now we invite Captain Steve Crosby of the Acton Minutemen to present the history of the flags.
I want to thank you all for coming out today on this beautiful day. I also want to, once again, as everyone else has, thank all the veterans that are in our midst today. Thank you all for your service. I want to let you know that I'm the captain of the Acton Minutemen. My name is Steve Crosby. This is Jennifer Tote, and she's also a member. You saw her up there firing. We're not just the Acton Minutemen. We're the Minute people, I guess. So, and I mean this, if you have any interest at all in history and Acton's heritage, come talk to us at some point, because we're always looking for new members. The Acton Minutemen were reformed in 1963 as a ceremonial organization for the purpose of perpetuating the historic part that gunsmith Isaac Davis and his Minuteman Company played in the fight at the Old North Bridge on the morning of April 19, 1775. Captain Davis in response to Major Buttrick's call for a group to lead the advance on the bridge, said, and most of you have probably heard this, "I haven't a man who's afraid to go." He swung his 38-man company into the lead. Captain Davis gave his life at the bridge that fateful morning and became one of America's heroes in the fight for independence. And he was the first commissioned officer to die for this country. Today's Acton Minuteman Company, composed of men, women, and children, reenacts each April 19th that special march to Concord. We participate in parades and local ceremonies throughout the year, as well as battle reenactments and other special events, representing Acton and its vital role in the American Revolution. The group is wholly voluntary and non-political, and we hope by our participation in special occasions to help rekindle some of that spirit and appreciation of the heritage that made this country what it is today. This History of the Flag presentation that you are about to see is one of the special offerings that we do. We invite anyone, again, with an interest in history to talk to us after the presentation. We respectfully dedicate this presentation of Flags of the Men in Acton to our foremost heroes and veterans of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and the wars of modern times. David, let's have a drum roll, please. Men of Acton have served under many flags of our nation. Most notable are the stars and stripes from the 13-star flag to the present-day 50-star flag. It is fitting and proper on this occasion, however, that we recall the banners of our heritage, the flags that men of Acton were first involved with during the birth of our nation, the banners that inspired and were inspired by the desire to be free from tyranny, but yet reflected the desire to carry forth some of the heritage of the mother country. Drum roll. First flag.
Our first flag is the British Union Jack. As might be suspected, flags of English heritage were to play the principal role in the development of our early American banners. The Cross of St. George, a red cross on a white field, and the Cross of St. Andrew, a white cross diagonally on a blue field. They were combined in 1603 to form the famous Union flag or Union Jack that flew over the colonies for more than a century and a half. From Jamestown to Plymouth, Boston to Acton until 1775, the present-day British Union Jack is similar with an additional diagonal red cross.
Our second flag is the red ensign, or meteor flag. It was commonly seen on merchant ships as well as the man of war. It was the flag of General Gage and Lord Howe as they occupied Boston and the countryside during the brewing storm of the 1760s and 70s. This flag also became the basis of some of the more important flags of the colonial resistance, as we shall soon see. It inspired the Endicott flag, the Newbury flag, the New England flag, and with the word liberty in bold letters, the Taunton flag in 1774.
The colonial ensign. As the New England colonies developed a flourishing maritime trade, a popular and widely used flag became this colonial ensign, a version of the red meteor. During this time, the colonists were busily devising all types of local flags. Another of these was the New England flag, substituting a blue field for the red field, causing it to resemble another British sea flag, the blue ensign. At the conclusion of the series of conflicts involving most European nations and their North American colonies In the first half of the 18th century, new problems arose between Great Britain and her colonies. With the conclusion of the 7 Years' War and the expulsion of the French from America in 1763, the great foreign menace was removed. New problems with the mother country now arose. Colonial assemblies were at loggerheads with the royal governors, new crises in colonial politics occurred, and the most notable was the Stamp Act troubles of the 1760s. Subsequently, the Boston Massacre of 1770, the Boston Tea Party in 1773, and the closing of the port of Boston in 1774 set the stage for war.
Our fourth flag in our presentation is the continental flag. The pine tree, long a symbol of New England, soon found its way to the banners of revolution. The continental flag, the red meteor with the pine tree substituted for the British Union in the canton, was the first flag in universal use in this area. As time wore on, troubles grew greater. Flames of independence were fanned by incidents in Boston, and the folks of Acton, as in other towns, were well aware of the impending conflict. In November of 1774, a company of Minutemen was raised by volunteer enlistment. Isaac Davis, a gunsmith and farmer by trade, was elected captain, and the company, by mutual agreement, met twice each week for instruction and drill. I want to note here that minute companies or Minuteman units were very distinct from a town's militia, in that the Minutemen were the cream of the crop taken from the existing militia companies. Militia drilled twice a year, Minutemen twice a week. It was required for men to serve in their town's militia unit unpaid, whereas Minutemen were paid to drill and serve. Most of Acton's Minutemen were veterans of the French and Indian War, so they were no stranger to warfare and tactics. The British military simply did not give the local militia and Minuteman companies any credibility whatsoever. Bumpkins and yokels, according to the lobsterbacks and redcoats of General Gage's troops in Boston, were seeking to act in a military manner. They laughed at the militia and Minuteman units. But in April of 1775, they would realize the folly of that arrogant thinking.
The fifth flag is the Bedford flag, and so it was. As event led to event, the climax occurred on the morning of April 19th in 1775, with which we are so familiar. At the Old North Bridge, Captain Davis, unafraid, was first in fight. Following in line after the Acton Minutemen were three Concord companies: Acton's West Militia Unit, followed by companies from Bedford and Lincoln, and Acton's East Militia Unit. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, here once the embattled farmers stood, and fired the shot heard round the world. This is the Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson. For many years it was thought that there was a flag carried that day, the Bedford flag, carried by Nathaniel Page of Bedford, Massachusetts. The design of this flag dates back to 1659 and the militia of Middlesex County. Used in the wars against the Indians, it is now thought by many scholars that it was actually not carried that day, and that in fact no flag was present at the bridge. But the Bedford flag is still taken as a symbol of the strength and fortitude of the local militia and Minuteman companies of the day nonetheless. In a direct confrontation against British forces at the bridge, Isaac Davis and Abner Hosmer of Acton laid down their lives. Men from Acton joined in the pursuit of the British, which followed the action at the bridge. James Hayward would lose his life in the afternoon at the Fisk House in Lexington. Others went all the way to Cambridge and joined in the siege of Boston that ensued. April 19th marked a moment in time where ordinary citizens were forced to suddenly dig deep into their beliefs and decide where their loyalties lay. The original Bedford flag from 1659 is still on display in Bedford Center. It is the oldest known flag in the United States and for that alone it is worthy of mention and inclusion in this narrative.
Incidentally, in case anyone doesn't know, all three of Acton's patriots from that day are buried under this monument that's in front of you in a common casket. Our next flag is the Bunker Hill flag. In spite of the rough treatment, the British held Boston for several more months. They were blockaded on the land side by the thousands of volunteers from the more distant parts of New England who joined the Minutemen and militia to form a strong line encircling the city. Referred to now as the Siege of Boston, veterans of former wars and the recent conflicts were there. To the famous names of Israel Putnam, Nathaniel Greene, John Stark, William Prescott, we must add Acton's own names: Hunt, Blanchard, Davis, Fletcher, Thorpe, Barker, and 18 others who fought in Colonel John Nixon's regiment with skill under this banner and the Pine Tree banner at Bunker Hill, June 17, 1775.
The seventh flag is the Union or Cambridge flag. In the latter part of 1775, the Continental Congress recognized the need for a continental flag, appointing a committee of Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Harris, and Thomas Lynch to journey to Boston and there confer with General Washington regarding a national flag. The idea of a new and opposing flag was not accepted unanimously. Many still hoped for reconciliation with England, including Washington himself, and the conference that ensued was a heated one. However, it was last decided that a flag should be devised which would contain a bold element indicating the colonies were united and that the union of military strength would be a prominent feature of the new banner. The result was the Grand Union flag, containing the crosses of St. George and St. Andrew on the blue field, with 13 stripes alternating red and white for the 13 colonies. It was officially hoisted January 2nd, 1776 by General Washington at Cambridge as the standard of the young Continental Army, and hence it is sometimes referred to as the Cambridge flag. It remained our national flag until June 14th, 1777. Men from Acton served under this flag at Dorchester Heights in the Siege of Boston and later in the Battle of White Plains, New York.
Our eighth flag is the Liberty Tree flag. On March 17, 1776, Lord Howe and General Gage, under the pressure of newly positioned rebel cannon, were forced to evacuate Boston. Before evacuation, however, General Gage chose to cut down one of the symbols of resistance, the Liberty Tree, the rallying point of the Sons of Liberty in Boston. While the Union or Cambridge flag was the flag of the nation, symbolic banners of local resistance continued to be used. The Liberty Tree banner was born to perpetuate the symbol of continued resistance to British rule in Massachusetts and the nation.
The ninth flag is the 13th Star flag. In 1777, it is said that a committee consisting of General Washington, Robert Morris, and Colonel Ross called on the Colonel's wife, Betsy Ross, and asked if she could make a flag after the design they showed her. She agreed, but suggested that the stars be 5-pointed, the French rule, rather than the 6-pointed, the English rule. Legend has it that General Washington described the flag in these words: "We take the stars from heaven, the red from our mother country, separating it by white stripes, thus showing that we have separated from her. And the white stripes shall go down to posterity, representing liberty." The Stars and Stripes was born in the midst of combat. It was a banner of people in travail, giving birth to a new nation founded upon liberty and freedom. Its first use is claimed at Fort Schuyler, New York, during a siege of English and Native Americans loyal to the Crown. This flag was cheered by patriots at Valley Forge in the winter of 1777 to 78 and at the Battle of Yorktown. Men of Acton served under this banner from that time forward until a change occurred in 1795.
Our 10th flag is the 15-star and 15-stripe flag. With the passage of time, new states were admitted to the Union, creating a new problem for our flag's design. It was intended that 1 star and 1 stripe would be added for each state. Little did they know. On May 1st, 1795, it was voted by Congress that the national flag should have 15 stars and 15 stripes, representing the addition of Vermont and Kentucky to the Union. This flag, in use from 1795 to 1818, became affectionately known as, anybody? The Star-Spangled Banner. It derived its fame flying over Fort McHenry during a British bombardment one night in 1814. Francis Scott Key, a Baltimore lawyer, was detained by the British while he was seeking the release of friends, and he had a front row view of the bombardment. He was sure that the fort would fall during the night, but miraculously, at dawn, the stars and stripes still flew. And Key was inspired to write the immortal words of the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. This banner flew on the USS Constitution on its Tripoli expedition of 1805 and was the first flag carried across the continent on the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1804. Men of Acton served under this flag during the War of 1812.
Our 11th flag is the 50-star flag, and the Minutemen flag with color guard. In 1818, by act of Congress, the number of stripes was fixed at 13, and that after July 4th, 1818, only new stars would be added for each new state entering the Union. In 1818, our flag was at 20 stars, and by 1848, at the close of the Mexican War, our flag had 29 stars. 4 new stars were added between the Mexican and Civil Wars. In 1861, Acton's men served under the 34-star flag, and later in 1864 under the 36-star flag. Acton's veterans of the Spanish-American War fought under 45 stars. The 48-star flag, in use for 47 years from 1912 to 1959, was the banner of Acton's fighting men in 2 world wars. The 49-star flag was in use for 1 year when it was superseded by 50 stars.
As we look back on over 200 years of history, we are reminded that our forebears, under many different banners, have given the last full measure. The last full measure to preserve the right of free choice in governing themselves and the 4 essential human freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom to worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. They remind us also that freedom is not without its price and its obligations, today as it was in their day. Though perhaps unwise and unpopular, our citizens even have the right to burn or denigrate our flag in protest, a freedom certainly not afforded citizens of many other countries. If a flag is looked upon as a symbol, ours must be looked upon as a symbol of ultimate freedom. Its changes through the ages have led it and us to where we are today. Acton's Minutemen of today march in memory of April 19th, 1775, and those men who have gone since that time. With a new banner commemorating the heritage of the past, a future, a pride and responsibility in the present, and a hope for the future. And we, too, are not afraid to go into that future. We thank you, and we invite you to talk to us afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you for coming out today.
Thank you, Captain Steve Crosby, Jen, and all the people that held the flags. They didn't know they were going to do that until they got here this morning. If you would like to join me in the benediction, may God give us grace to lift up those who were strengthened in the crucible. Stand with those who still bear its marks. And most of all, never, never, never forget the debt of gratitude we owe them. Never forget. Amen. That concludes our ceremony for today's Veterans Day. We thank you for coming. Thank you.